This is the second of 3 videos on the topic of beliefs, scripts and stories. And in the last video, the first video, I gave you 2 practical tips to help you recognise your own beliefs, stories and scripts and where they come from, because that's the first step to actually doing something about them. But before we look at our next steps, I want to say something that is fundamental. It's really important for us to understand, and it's this. I mentioned it in my first video, but here it is again. We're hardwired to survive, so if we believe our survival is threatened in any way, we'll behave like primitive animals, fighting, running away, freezing or appeasing. But of course, this short-term survival strategy doesn't always lead to successful long-term outcomes for us or others. So a people pleaser survives by pleasing people and not rocking the boat. And the downside of that? Voice not heard, difficult issues not dealt with. A perfectionist survives by doing everything perfectly, even when it doesn't need to be perfect. Potential long-term impact? An unnecessary focus on minute and unimportant detail at the expense of the more important stuff, and that can lead to overwork and even burnout. Or a person who says they're no good at presentations avoids doing them, or goes off sick every time they have to do one. Long-term impact, bad reputation for landing other people in it, and of course potentially career limiting. So how do we actually change those beliefs and take a different action? Follow this next step, which is in 3 parts, and you may want to write this down. I'll give you some practical examples afterwards. So decide first of all on one belief that you want to change and relate it to a specific situation and or person where having a different belief will lead to the behaviour and action that will get you better results. Decide on what a more helpful belief would be, and then take action based on that new belief. Let me give you an example and explain it a little bit more. I'm going to give you an example of what Jane did. Jane's belief had always been, I don't do conflict. In fact, she used those words a lot. So the short-term benefit to Jane was that everybody loves me, I'm really supportive and people appreciate it. Long-term problem for Jane was that the poor performance from one of her team members was just not being addressed. So the outcome, wasted time, energy and money, and frustrated colleagues who just wanted Jane to sort it out and deal with it. So Jane had to shift that belief and she adopted a more helpful belief, and it was something like this. She said to herself, as a manager, it's my responsibility to give every member of my team honest feedback on how they can improve their performance, but also to find out what might be getting in the way. So what did Jane do next? It's easy to just say, yeah, I'll change the belief, but not so easy to do it. So she had to do some planning for the conversation that she wanted to have. So she wrote down some words, her opening lines, some questions she could ask and the outcome she wanted. She played around a little bit with the words, recorded the words on a phone, listened back, tweaked them and recorded them again. So doing all this helped her feel calmer, more organised and much clearer on what she had to do. She was still nervous and she didn't go in with a script, but because she'd practiced so much, she was much more focused on what she had to do. The fear of doing something challenging can mean we avoid it, but taking that first step, in Jane's case, changing the belief that was keeping her stuck, acting from the new belief, but also planning and preparing the conversation in advance, meant she was able to go ahead and take the action. And of course, next time it'll be easier. So I hope you've enjoyed this second video in my series of 3, and the third video is coming next. Thanks for listening.